Welcome to The Cool Down, a Bailiwick Express podcast where we meet the people making the sports headlines. Hello, I'm Nick Mann. The Marathon des Sables is known as one of the toughest foot races in the world for good reason. It is both a supreme physical and mental battle, but creates experiences that last a lifetime. Drew Jonkmans is now back in the island after conquering the heat, exhaustion, injury, blisters and kit malfunctions in the Moroccan Sahara. He was raising money for Guernsey Mind, and this is his story. Drew, brilliant. Thanks for coming in today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I mean, like the last time we spoke together, you were at Foots Lane having just about completed a 24-hour track challenge.
Yeah.
Amazing. And now you've just returned from the Marathon des Sables, which was the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
What was it like crossing that finish line?
It was, an amazing feeling. The finish line was the end of the sixth stage, which was a 21-kilometre run, so relatively short compared to the others, and it was a relatively fast course as well. But I mean, just the energy around the finish line of everyone's in tears, everyone's cheering, there's music going, and it's more just a feeling. I couldn't really put it into words. I'm still struggling to for it to settle in at the moment as well. But it's just thinking how it's all done, and it's now time to go home. And it's like feelings of sadness as well, because you've spent the whole week with your tent mates and you've grown really close to them, and everyone's crying because they've done their own achievements and their own goals, whether it's to finish in the top half of the pack or if it's just to finish at all. It's just a really great energy hanging around where everyone achieving this massive goal that they've been training for years, it was just a really amazing space to be in.
I mean, cast your mind back a little bit, because it wasn't all smooth sailing to get to this point, and actually I guess it wasn't necessarily what you were aiming for last year.
No, exactly. So the original plan was to raise money for Guernsey Mind by doing the half Marathon des Sables, which is essentially half the days in the desert and half the distance, so 120 kilometres and 3 separate stages and 4 days in the desert in Egypt. But that unfortunately got cancelled a week before I was due to leave because of the conflict in Gaza, which was a massive a massive set down for me, because I was aiming for it for over 6 months, ever since my first ultra in Guernsey. And so I then came up with the idea, since I'd been raising money for charity, I felt kind of bad with everyone donating and me not being able to do anything. So I rented the Foots Lane track for 24 hours. I came up with the idea just to see how many laps I could get in and aim for the distance of 100 miles in 24 hours. So I went on from there and luckily crossed the finish line at 24 hours at 105 miles, I think 420 laps, if I remember correctly, which was an amazing experience. It was always a format of race I wanted to try. It's quite a popular format in the ultra running community, because it's more of a mental test rather than physical. Obviously it is a physical test, but more so it's mental, since you're just going around the same track over and over again. It's very monotonous, but it fitted in well with it being me raising money for Guernsey Mind, with it being a mental challenge. So that's what I wanted. That's where I was at the end of November when I last spoke to you. And then with part of the cancellation of the HMDS, I was given an opportunity to take a place in the full MDS, which at the time I kind of said no to originally, because that is a massive step up. Everyone in the ultra community knows MDS as one of the toughest foot races you can do out there in the Sahara, and 50 odd degree heat, and it's just yeah, it's kind of one of those races that everyone dreams with, but they don't usually end up doing it. But suddenly something came over me, and I just accepted it, said yes, and thought, oh, I might as well do it. It's the same attitude I've done with all my other races before. It's just say yes and worry about the training when it comes to it. And that's what I did. And yeah, then there I was after that. Yeah.
I mean, how do you begin to get yourself ready for a race like that, when especially the sand, the heat, and everything else is going to be such a factor?
Yeah.
And we're in the middle of a Guernsey winter.
Yeah. I luckily with me training for the HMDS, I was already kind of geared up for training that in that kind of way. So I'd done a lot of research. So a lot of my training really was trying to get in the miles in week on week. After the 100-mile race, I was obviously in quite had a few areas of injury and stuff. So I knew I had to kind of, it was definitely going to be a month or two of just looking after myself more and repairing and keeping up fitness levels where I could without getting injured. Because if you go into MDS with an injury, you're asking for trouble. There's no way you're coming out without it being worse or coming out with another injury. So yeah, I was just focusing on looking after myself for the first couple of months. The heat acclimatization, that was more kind of sauna sessions. Obviously, we're very limited in Guernsey. There's no heat chambers, which is a very popular way to train. For the MDS, you'd spend an hour in a heat chamber on a treadmill, and you'd find after about 5 sessions, your heart rate could drop about 10 beats per minute. About 10 beats, yeah. But obviously there's no facilities for that over here, unfortunately. So the best I could do was sauna sessions after a long run, and then lots of layers when I could, and a sauna suit as well, which was quite funny. So if you ever saw someone running in the night in what looked like a black bin bag, then yeah, that was me trying my best to get my body temperature up. But yeah, it was definitely a strange training program for MDS, because it was more looking after myself and keeping the fitness levels up. I knew I had it in my legs from the 24-hour run. I knew they could do it, and from previous ultras as well. And then a lot of mental training as well, I suppose. A lot of mental preparation just for what you're going to face. Luckily, I was very lucky to be able to speak to previous MDS competitors in Guernsey. Daz Kare being one of them, who was lovely to speak to me and just gave me all really valuable tips that you can't really get online, and tips with how you're going to feel when you're out there, when things go wrong, when you get injuries. That's the kind of things you really have to prepare for, because if you get to that point when you're in the middle of the desert and you don't have a response to it in your head, you're not going to be in a good place, and you're likely going to be pressing that button for someone to come pick you up and take you home. So I think that the months leading up to it, it was a lot of mental preparation. Yeah.
I mean, how does it feel when you get out there, and especially once you've got to base camp as well?
Yeah.
What's that like?
It was a crazy journey just getting there, to be honest. And especially for people from Guernsey, just getting off Guernsey could be quite a pain at the moment if there's fog, which there was. My first flight was cancelled from Guernsey to London, and that was an absolute nightmare. So the day after, I had to get the first flight to Southampton and then train up to Gatwick, which was, I was very lucky to be able to get on the charter flight straight to Warazat, which is kind of like the MDS base where all the hotels are for before and after the race. So I was very lucky to get onto that last minute. And then after that, you have another 6-hour coach journey into the desert from there, which is, everyone is kind of chatty at first for about the first half an hour, and then it's just absolute silence. Everyone's can see the heat getting worse, and everyone's seeing the terrain getting, there's little hardly any villages going in. Like the further we go into the journey, and then suddenly you see the tents coming up, and it's kind of the reality sets in. It's in the middle of nowhere, and then you step off the bus and you just get hit by a wave of heat, and wind and sandstorms and all sorts. But when we arrived to the first bivouac, actually, it was a really good energy there. They had the local Berbers were singing for us, and it was all like a big long red carpet into our tent. So we arrived there on a Friday, which was probably around dinner time. So that was when our self-sufficiency kicked in. So when we were then responsible for our own food and meals, but at that time we had our like secondary suitcase with us. At that point, so I had filled my suitcase with all sorts of food from Gatwick. I'd raided the Pret shop at Gatwick with all sorts of like granolas and all sandwiches and all sorts of snacks and stuff. So we were just filling up on calories before, as we knew it was gonna be tough after the suitcase gets taken away. So that was the first night in the bivouac. I didn't know any of my tent mates before going, but luckily they were all absolutely lovely. A couple my age, some really strong competitors. One of them who actually finished 23rd overall in the field, a British guy my age, Chris Cox, and he was fantastic to learn from. And so we had our first night in the bivouac that night, and that was quite reality kicked in as well. I had only a fold-up foam mattress, and that was not a great night's sleep. And everyone else had inflatable mattresses and inflatable pillows, and I was very envious straight away after the first night and realised I made a little bit of a mistake. But I was definitely trying to make my pack as light as possible. So that's why I went for the foam mattresses instead. And then the next day was just kind of technical checks and medical checks. So you go to a tent and they make sure you have all the mandatory equipment. So that's things like they want you to take 14 stock cubes, which is now their new rule for sodium intake. So they used to be salt tablets, but now they want you to take these stock cubes, that basically your basic Knorr chicken cubes that you'd put in your stew or something, and we were having to eat them with, we'd either put them in a cold water bottle, or you'd just have to eat them raw. It would just be awful, but that's the best way of looking after yourself with your sodium intake, which is obviously really important in the heat. And then other mandatory equipment was like your basic survival stuff, like a survival blanket, signalling mirror, lighters, whistles, a compass, and etc. And then you'd have to have your ECG and doctor's certificate signed by your GP, and then they'd check that. And all that day was basically just an admin day of getting your stuff ready. And then at the end of the day, they'd take your suitcase away from you, and you'd kind of then be left with your equipment with what you'd have for a week. And you'd be wearing your backpack, and everyone would be making last-minute decisions to throw things away. I threw my cooking equipment away on the last-minute panic when my pack weighed way too much than what I wanted it to. So I made a decision that I was going to put up with the cold, dehydrated food for the rest of the week. And then also I threw my poles away last minute as well, which I did come to regret a little bit later on, especially in the long stage on the dunes. But in the interest of saving weight, which is really important, when you're having it on your back for that kind of distance, it can make a lot of difference if you can save even 100 grams here up to 500 grams. You will feel the difference for sure. Yeah.
Is there ever a sense that you want to turn back at this point, or is there just this momentum, like you're stuck on this train now?
Yeah, for sure. It is definitely like you're stuck. But I mean, it was a really good kind of atmosphere in the tents. Everyone was really excited and just like raring to get going. Basically, we were all sat around our tent on Saturday. Like, I wish we could. The first stage would be like the night stage. We'd get 30 kilometers out of the way. We're all ready to go. We're all fresh. And and Saturday night was not a good night's sleep because we were just so nervous for what we're going to have to do in the morning. But yeah, it was. I was definitely excited more than I was nervous. I think I was more nervous before in Guernsey, trying to travel and get there. It was just the process of getting there, which was the important thing, and then the rest would kind of would be up to me. So I knew that everything else from that point onwards was in my control. So I was a lot happier at that point.
And then I guess given that, taking that first step on the first stage must have been an incredible moment.
Yeah, that was amazing. So the first stage, I think 27 kilometers, started on the Sunday morning. Really good atmosphere. So before, they have this big van which is like full of speakers, and that have a very enthusiastic French man playing very French discotheque music and doing some very dodgy dance moves at the start to get everyone pumped up. But then the very I can't think of the word. The typical MDS song is AC/DC Highway to Hell, which they play at the start of every stage, and everyone knows that song. And as soon as it kicked in, you hear the first guitar riff come in, and everyone's hair's just standing on end, and everyone's just going crazy. And it was just blaring loud. And we had a massive countdown, and it kicked off, and everyone's just off out the gates way too quick, and we're all to my tent mates, everyone here is just going way too fast. And I definitely said to myself before, I really need to, just be calm and just run carefully. And we had a funny joke in our tent because of the James Cracknell documentary. So James Cracknell was the Olympic rower who did the MDS, and on the first day he just absolutely blitzed it. But he was in big trouble after the first day, and we were all basically, we can't do a Cracknell, we have to take it slowly. But about 5k in, I was close to doing a road, a PB for what would have been on a road for a 5k for me. I was like, oh God, I better slow down. My heart rate's in about 175, and but luckily at that time of the morning it wasn't too warm. So. But yeah, I found myself, I think, in the top 50 on the first 5 kilometers or so. But I realised I did have to slow down. But yeah, that stage went really well. Actually, it was quite a hard underfoot stage, so it was very kind of similar to Guernsey Cliffs kind of terrain, which is obviously very which is great for me because I knew I'm fast on that, and I'm good technically on that kind of terrain. It's all big rocks and kind of gravelly, slippery stuff, but stuff I'm very used to with Guernsey Cliffs. So I did great on that stage. But yeah, it was just a great atmosphere. Everyone was just raring to go, and it was just very funny seeing everyone just sprint for the first few kilometres, and then everyone's just knackered from that point onwards. But yeah, I definitely did do a bit of a Cracknell myself, but I learned to pace myself after that. Yeah,
and I guess it's a lesson of recovery each day as well, and how you're fueling yourself. How did that side of it go?
So the fueling during the race, I use something which I use on the 24-hour run called Tailwind, which is basically a carbohydrate kind of powder and electrolyte at the same time. So it's about 100 calories per kind of scoop of this stuff. I just put it into one of my water bottles, and that would kind of I would do it every 10 kilometers, which would usually be around an hour, depending on the terrain. And then that's along with so the company who do Cliff bars, so it's Cliff shot blocks. They're kind of like a gelatin sweet with quite a lot of carbohydrates in them. But it's kind of like a little treat every 10 kilometers or so. So yeah, that, and then obviously the sodium intake. I had salt tablets as well as the stock cubes. So I was taking those to make sure I wasn't cramping up, and then you had your water stops every 10 kilometers as well. And then in terms of recovery, kind of after the race, I had a Tailwind product again, which is a recovery shake. So it's kind of a bit more like a protein shake. But you just do 1 scoop of that in the water, and then it's kind of just looking after yourself, stretching, and going to medical tent if you need it. I had quite a big problem with my shoulders after the first day, which is strange because I'd done a lot of training with my backpack, but it's something didn't feel right. And so I got my back taped up by one of the doctors there, which did pretty good job of looking after it for the rest of the week. And yeah, it's kind of, I think a lot of the recovery is just focusing on the sleep, which is quite hard to get over there. So as soon as you're back in the tent, getting straight into a nap was good. Sorting out your personal admin is massive. If you can get that done straight away, it's such a huge part of MDS, because that's where a lot of people fail. If you're not doing your personal admin and looking after yourself and your equipment, then something could go wrong very quickly. And then my meals after that as well was just getting enough calories in, which is definitely hard. But I had my dehydrated food, which obviously I didn't have any cooking equipment to do it with. But we came up with a process with tent mates probably around 3:00 in the afternoon. We'd put the water into the Ziploc bags and then we'd leave them in the sun. And then come dinner time at about 5:30, they were like lukewarm, so edible, so they weren't too bad. But yeah, that was probably about, I was running on roughly about 2,500 calories a day, which obviously is nowhere near enough for that kind of event, but that's kind of the balance between weight and calories. That's the best you can do, really. So yeah, that was kind of the recovery protocol, just looking after yourself.
And what's your confidence after that first stage? Because that's a massive unknown, isn't it?
Yeah.
At the end of the day. So, do you settle into it and feel actually this is doable?
Mm-hmm.
And when does that kick in? Is that?
It was definitely, the first day was really good. It was a strong stage. It wasn't too hot that day, so we were all a bit like, this can't be that bad. if it's more of this, then we'll be fine. And I finished really strongly the first day. I think I was top 75 or something. I did feel like I'd taken it too far, and I knew this wasn't sustainable for the rest of the 8 days. So I knew I wasn't going to be that high up, but I was happy that I'd kind of built myself up that kind of pillow of room. But yeah, so it wasn't too hot, and we were like, this is definitely doable. But that opinion changed pretty quickly going on into the other stages. But it definitely gave me a layer of confidence that I should be here. It's not an imposter syndrome. I've made the right decision to be here, and I can definitely compete for a good spot if I do it properly. So I was in a really good place after the first day. I knew I wouldn't be like top 50 or anything like that, but I knew I could definitely be top 25% of the field for sure, and definitely high up amongst the Brits. So yeah, I definitely had a good level of confidence going in. That confidence definitely waned, like going further into the stages as it got hotter. But I was very happy after the first stage.
So yeah, take us into stage 2 and what the contrasts are there.
So stage 2, I struggle to remember. I think it was 35 kilometers or something, I think. That was definitely a tougher day in terms of terrain. Much bigger dunes, much softer underfoot, kind of deep sand, going through wadis and quite a bit more elevation. So it was tough, but it was definitely doable again, because it was hotter, but not like uncomfortably hot. And we were starting early in the morning, so my strategy always was to try and get ahead of the field as much as possible whilst it's cool, because that's what I'm used to running in. And anything hard underfoot, that's like Guernsey Cliffs, I'd always be running. I'd always try and run that because I knew I was comfortable on that, and I'm fine with slippery stuff and technical stuff like that. I can deal with that. It's just all the soft underfoot, sand and kind of stuff. I would always try and just kind of do a really strong walk through and kind of march through it as much as I could. And the elevation was okay as well. So I finished a little bit further behind the field than I did on the first day, but I definitely took it a lot easier. I focused a lot more on my heart rate on the second day. So I came up with a strategy where I would run until my heart rate would be around 160, 165, and then I'd bring it back a bit and do a fast walk and let it settle back into like the 120s, 130s. Because that's probably the best way you can look after your body in terms of recovery, is making sure your heart rate's not peaking too much. Otherwise, you're just going to be knackered on the next few days. So that's the most kind of proven scientific way you can look after yourself, is just focusing on heart rate, because that does put a lot of stress in your body. Peaking it too high, too much, and that's definitely where a lot of people failed early on in the stage, I think. But yeah, stage 2 went well, and that was the day before the dreaded long stage. So that night was more of a sleepless night as well, and it was kind of, that's first when I felt really like worried for what was to come, because rumours had started going around the camp that the forecasted temperatures were going to like raise up a lot, especially during like the kind of June sections. And since it is the long day, you'd be starting earlier at 6 a.m, but you knew that you would still be out in the field at the hottest part of the days, come like 1 or 2 p.m. And I knew that, judging on my speed for the day, I was going to be hitting like the kind of soft like dunes areas around the hottest part of the day. So yeah, I was very nervous for that coming up at the end of stage 2. But yeah.
Are you getting any feedback, or like people that have had experience from MDS that were part of the race this year? Is there any of that kind of chat going on amongst the group as well?
So feedback from people who've done it before?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, a lot of people said that it was quite an easy start. And in terms of temperature, like it was quite comfortable, like it was okay. And yeah, they thought it was a good chance for people to like really perform, especially for the Brits, since it was cooler. So yeah, there were quite a lot of good British runners doing well because of that. And there've been quite a couple of changes in the way the MDS has been done, because it's a new company as well that had taken over this year. So the checkpoints were done a little bit differently. They had taken quite a lot of stick in previous years for not having enough like facilities to cool people down. They had a really tough year in 2021, I think, where they had really high temperatures around 55 degrees, and they had a lot of trouble and a lot of people overheating, and unfortunately they had a death during that year as well from someone overheating. So I think this year round they made quite a lot of focus on cooling people down. So they introduced like this iced kind of water station at the end of every checkpoint, where they'd throw actual iced water over your head for a little bit, and they'd kind of soak your buff for you or your hat, stuff like that, which really helped out. That was great. So a lot of feedback was going around from previous people who have done that before. Yeah, and we'd always be going around trying to find someone who's done MDS before and trying to suck as much information from them as possible. So yeah, it was very helpful having them there to speak to, for sure.
guess you're
Yeah.
always learning as you go. So,
Yeah.
yeah, stage 3, obviously, there must be some trepidation going into that.
Yeah.
It's well known as like the sort of big
Yeah.
test as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
was it everything you were expecting?
Yeah. I mean, it was very hard to know what to expect for sure. I'd heard horror stories from all sorts of from loads of people before, for different reasons, for injuries or just for the terrain and the heat in general. And so you get given a road book at the start of the week, which is kind of which shows illustrations of each of the stages, and like general descriptions and elevations and compass bearings and stuff like that. And we were looking at it as a tent together the night before, and we saw within the first 12k there was this. So you go into sandy dunes first, which is okay in the cooler temperature, and then you come to this jebel, which is a jebel is the Moroccan name for a mountain basically. A massive steep ascent, which is about 500 meters of elevation. It is just ginormous within the first 12k, and we came to it on the day, and it was horrific. Just probably about an hour's worth of climbing up, just steep ascent. We got to the top, it was fantastic, like amazing views, and then the other side of it was a really steep descent but of soft sand. So that was really fun to come down. That was like a really quick descent, which is good. But to get that kind of out the way in the first 12k was quite good. But I mean, the legs were really feeling it after that. And I think after that, I had a bit of a moment where I was like, right, I'm 12k down. It's 70k more to go. And I knew there was a couple more jebels coming up, and then the dreaded dune stretch as well, which was going to be during the hottest part of the stage. So yeah, we knew that was coming, and we were as tent mates, we were all pretty worried about that. So yeah, we had that to look forward to on the start line. So everyone was definitely more quiet on the start of the long stage, for sure, because they knew what was coming, and they knew that some of the slower runners, the people that kind of hike it or walk it, they knew that they were going to be out in the field for up to 30 hours, some of them. The cut-off time is 36 hours, and I think the last person who crossed the stage was 35 hours or so, which is just such a long time to be out there. That's going through the hottest part of the day on that day, then going through the night, and then still finishing through the hottest part of the day on the day after, which is just it was just crazy. So yeah.
And what kind of temperatures did it hit then out on that stage once you're into those dunes?
So it's getting the actual temperature reading is quite hard in the MDS. They never tell you like what it reaches, but so we're kind of rumours go around the tent of what it hit and stuff, but my closest reading of what I could get it to was someone next to me during the dunes on the long stage had a temperature gauge on their backpack, and I think it was the needle was just crossing over at 51 degrees during the dunes, which was it's just crazy. It's like as soon as you get into the dunes, you're getting like cooked from above, but you're also getting cooked from below from the sand as well, from it reflecting, which is just a crazy feeling. And especially in the deep sand, that was definitely the hardest stage. But so that was the kind of temperatures we were dealing with during the dunes, and then kind of through the lake beds, you'd be kind of like early 40s kind of temperature. So that was from about midday to 3 or 4 o'clock, and then it would kind of start to cool down a little bit. And we were all just begging for the sun to set, and we could really start to get running after that. And you kind of make as much time as you could in the morning as well, because at the cooler temperatures. And it had been a really windy week apart from that day. we're all just begging for the wind, for a breeze, and you see as soon as a breeze comes up, everyone's putting their hands up to kind of air out a little bit, and everyone's just just praying for any kind of breeze at all to cool you down a bit. So that's the kind of temperatures we were dealing with on that day. Yeah.
I mean, how does the group dynamic work out on during the race as well?
The group.
Well, during that stage, you're are you amongst people? It sounds like you're amongst people,
I mean, definitely like the first half of the long day, we were grouped up quite. You definitely have like packs. So I'd say like, on that day, the top 50, so the elite group started an hour and a half later than us. So that would kind of be, you'd have like miniature packs within that top 50. So you'd have the elite Moroccans that were always on their own. There's no one competing with them, that you just let them pass, and they're doing faster road half marathons on soft sand. It's crazy. So they'd always be by themselves, but you might have like 10th to 20th as a little pack group within about a kilometre of each other, so you could always see each other. But I mean, I was always in a pack, roughly about 20 people, and the long stage probably between places 125 and 150. So like about 25 people you could see within a kilometre stretch, and you'd always have people you'd be yo-yoing in between. They'd overtake you, they'd walk for a bit, and you'd overtake them, and then it just keeps going and keeps on going for like kilometres on end. But it's good because you speak to them and you kind of get to know them a little bit, and you can help each other out. Or some of them are a bit more competitive and they don't want to speak to you, but then that also works in your favour as well mentally, because then you have someone to target, and that definitely helped for me. But definitely during the first half of the stage, the long stage was very technical. We had the Jebel, as I was saying before, and then we had probably about 10 kilometres of a second Jebel which we went up, which was really high up, and we were travelling along the spine of it, which you could probably only fit about 2 runners either side, because it was the spine was so narrow. So overtaking was very limited at that point, but it was a very technical, very slippery. Everyone was going much slower because if you fell off and you were rolling down the hill, you're not surviving that. So that was very technical. So a lot of people were bunched up at that point, and then as soon as we descended off that Jebel, we went into a bigger lake bed. So that's when the road runners, I say, come into their prime and they can make some space up. I definitely got ahead of a lot of the pack on the technical bits. So on that spine, I managed to overtake people in places where I could, and then I did the descent pretty quick, and then on the lake bed I made some room up as well. But then as soon as you get to those kind of flat stages, that's when you kind of see the packs that are going to carry on for the rest of the race. But from that point onwards, once you go over like the 40k mark, I think people are a lot more spaced out, and people are having breaks at checkpoints. There was a couple points where I could only see someone about half a kilometre in front of me, and the same behind. And then there were some points where I was completely alone as well. But yeah, it's interesting seeing like familiar faces you're yo-yoing with throughout the day, and you kind of get to measure your own pace against other people. So yeah, it's interesting how it worked, but a lot of it kind of went on how much time people were taking at checkpoints, because a lot of people would have big breaks at checkpoints just to cool down and stuff. So it kind of depended a lot on that, but you'd always see the same kind of people around you. Yeah.
And the finish line for that stage must have felt great.
Yeah, that was amazing. So I finished, I think, just after the 16-hour mark, which I was happy with. I was aiming for sub 15, but I had quite an episode during the dunes of around the hottest stage, I was really weak and didn't have enough calories or water on me, and I really struggled through there, which definitely slowed me down a bit. But yeah, towards the end of the long stage, I got a second wind. I had a mini dinner at one of the checkpoints, a mac and cheese dehydrated expedition meals food, and that gave me a lot more energy. And I think I listened to a couple songs at the checkpoint, and yeah, after that I just went flying out of the checkpoint. I was in a really good mood, and I was hitting about 5:30 kilometre splits on the lake bed after that, and I made up some really good time on that bit. And then it got dark, and the pain in my legs started to come through pretty quick, and I was probably about 15k away from the finish. I think I decided from that point on I was just going to do like a quick kind of march, and try and make some time up, but not take too much out of my legs, because I knew obviously I've still got about 120 kilometres left of running to do for the rest of the week. So the finish line was pitch black at that time, which was beautiful with the stars as well. That was great. I'd been looking forward to that all week. Everyone talks about the long stage, and running through the night in the desert is just amazing with very little light pollution. You could see so much. That was amazing. That was definitely one of the highlights of the race for sure. So the last probably 5 kilometres or so was a straight line on this through the wadi. You could see the finish line. They still got the French disco music blaring, and all the lights are on at the bivouac, and you can see the inflatable finish line as well. And yeah, mentally I got into a really good position, and I just decided to do kind of like a really very fast kind of march towards the finish line. I think I managed to pick off about 20 or 25 people, which I was really happy with. I just got into a really good like competitive space in my head, and just went for it. And then with about half a kilometre of the finish line, I was just really pleased with myself. And I think I crossed the finish line doing like a 4:15 kilometre split or something, and I was just sprinting at the end. And that was definitely a highlight, crossing the finish line, then knowing I'd done 85k and I'd done it in a good time. I think I just made the top 150 on the long stage, or maybe just a bit outside. But yeah, I was so happy then. But I went back to the tent. 2 of my tent mates were there already. They had finished, and they were just they were just beside themselves. They were so knackered, and we had the French disco music playing all night, and our tent was about 50 yards away from the finish line, and it's just like this hardcore like techno bass music going, and you have the French guy on the microphone announcing everyone crossing the finish line. And they said before the race, you're going to need earplugs, because we're going to be going through all the night. And yeah, so we didn't sleep much that night either. But yeah, the pain in my legs was very equal to the pain I had after the 100-mile run. It was really, really intense. I remember saying to my tent mates, that 85 kilometres was not way more, but it's definitely more of a mental challenge than the 24-hour run I did. And the pain in my legs was definitely, more intense than the pain I felt then. I think just the elevation they'd been through, and the heat as well. I was just exhausted after that. But yeah.
And I guess you might be regretting the lack of poles.
Yes,
that
definitely.
Point. I mean, you mentioned it earlier, but I'm thinking this might be the time where...
Yeah, for sure. During the dunes, I was like, oh, Drew, you absolute idiot. I was seeing people just like, people skipping up the dunes with their poles, and I was like, oh, God, I was just crawling like up the dunes at some points. I was like, oh, I really wished I had taken them. So I had trained with them, and obviously I'm quite a big guy. I'm not really as kind of a runner profile, so I really could have done with them going up the dunes, because I'm just sinking in the sand. I'm about 85 kilos at a time, so it's no like light runner profile. So I'm sinking in the sand. I really should have done with the poles, but yeah, I managed to make it through anyways. But yeah, I think if I had the poles, I would have been a lot more comfortable, and I probably would have been a little bit higher placed. But yeah, it's those decisions you make that make those differences. But yeah, I was regretting it a lot during the dunes for sure.
Do you remember what the tunes were that revitalised you so well as well? Music.
The music.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't. I think it was the playlist I had during the 24-hour run. It's quite a funny time during the 24-hour run. Probably about 2 a.m. It's a mixture of like kind of rock and metal music, but then also a lot of like really cheesy tunes. So during the night of the 24-hour run, I had things like Whitney Houston that I was just singing like at the top of my lungs. It was just keeping me going. I think it was just cheesy stuff like that. Yeah, just stuff could kind of like lift you up a little bit and kind of motivate you. So I'm sure it was definitely one of those cheesy songs that really got to me, because that kept me going for the 24-hour run for sure. It was just me, my mum and my auntie during the night at Foots Lane, and they were trying to guess what song I was singing every time I'd go past the stands at Foots Lane. So I put that playlist on. I knew it would definitely pick me up a little bit. So stuff like that, and then a couple of songs like a bit like The Prodigy and stuff like that. Yeah, that definitely helped a lot, just to kind of lighten the mood a bit, kind of put like a sense of humour into it a little bit as well. It definitely helps for sure, that kind of positive mindset. Yeah.
Is there a danger after that, such a big stage and such a tough experience, but then finishing on a high, that you think, you know what, I've done this. This is going to be a cakewalk now. So what was it like? How did you approach the coming days?
Yeah, so the day after we had a rest day, so we had a lot of time to think about it. And yeah, so we knew that it was like a pyramid. The stages are like a pyramid. So we had the rest day, and then the day after that we have the marathon day. Where it's just over a marathon. It was about 40, I think it's 44.3 kilometers, I think. And then day after that you have 31k, and then day after that is the finished day of 21. And to be honest, I did finish on a high, but as soon as I woke up in the morning, the pain we were all going through. We had most of our tent mates by the time I woke up, but there were 2 that were walking it and they hadn't come in yet, so we were a bit worried about them, but we were all in so much pain, and we were thinking we literally have a marathon to do tomorrow alone, and then after that 30k, which is no small run, and then 21k. Our attitude was, if we make it past the 40 and the 30k, we were treating the 21k as like a fun run. We were like, oh, it's nothing. It's a freebie. It's a fun run. But obviously it's not. So yeah, we weren't in a great way during the rest day. My feet were in a bad way after the long stage. So I spent a lot of time in the medical tent treating my blisters, which this year for the first time, the medical team don't do for you. So they now encourage that they teach you how to do it and you do it yourself, which is a challenge in itself. That is a very painful experience, injecting blisters with iodine and trying to suck everything out of them and then tape them up after that, and you're doing it in a sandy place and it's windy and all sorts of stuff, so that's a challenge in itself. So I kind of just focused on my personal admin on that day, looking after my blisters, a couple of rounds of painkillers for the legs, food. I mean, at that point we were struggling for food. I definitely realised I didn't take enough, and So we were scavenging for all the people that were DNFing. I got basically made a deal with one of the British volunteers, that I'd buy him a couple of beers back at the Berber Palace at the hotel after the finish. If he'd tip me off when a DNFer came in, and they'd leave some of their food behind. And he came round and tipped us off that a couple of people had dead DNF, and they've left some food in the information tent. And I've never put my shoes on quicker, and I was running towards that tent to get as much food as we could. And we had quite a few extra bags of food, which really helped us, and we were just eating all of it throughout that day. And an inflatable mattress, which I found as well, which is fantastic. So I managed to get some decent sleep after that, and I threw away the foam one. But yeah, it was very daunting knowing we had the 40, the marathon day, and then the 30k and the 21k to go. That was definitely one of the tougher days, just knowing we had that to do and being in so much pain at that point. We knew it was definitely going to be a massive mental challenge getting through the rest.
And I guess you're getting invested as well in other people's races. You mentioned there about the waiting for your 10 mates to get back as well.
Oh, yeah. So we had, so Chris in my tent, who was, a lot faster than me. He was, 23rd overall, which is just a fantastic result. And then a couple others, one more who was top 50, he was a really strong runner, and then a couple others around similar to me. And then we also had a father and a daughter who were more kind of like trekking the race. And so I think they came in about 25 or 26 hours on the long stage, which is just such a slog. But it's they were the heroes in my mind, because I could not imagine being out there through the whole night and then coming back in whilst it's hot as well. They're just absolute soldiers in my mind. So I think that helped a lot actually as well, just helping each other out. I think if you could kind of take the focus away from yourself a bit and kind of help others where you can, it would kind of pass the time, and everyone was much happier if everyone was doing well as a tent. And we did actually have really a successful tent. All of us kind of reached our goals and stuff. And kind of helping each other through that definitely helped a lot, for sure. Yeah.
So get going again. It's like we know, like as general runners, the next day, even after a training run, it can be a stiff experience to get back out on the road. Sure. Now this has got to be something else.
So started the marathon day, or just more than a marathon. I absolutely mummified my feet with Haploband, which is basically like a softer version of physio tape. So I taped all my toes up, all the hot spots I had on my feet. I had double layered my socks and locked the laces of my shoes as well. And I remember getting up and putting my rucksack on and just hobbling to the start line. I was like, how is this going to work? I have no idea how I'm going to do this, but you see everyone else just hobbling as well. If you looked at that person and said, right, you have to run, a marathon in the Sahara Desert today, you'd bet your whole life's earnings on them not making it. But I mean, once we started and once we got going, I did hobble off the start line. And funnily enough, actually, my mum saw a video on Instagram of the start of that day, and she saw me hobbling off the start line, and she said she was blind with worry, and she was just upset for me because I just looked awful. But I kind of hobbled into like a slow jog, and then suddenly your legs kind of accept it, and you really get into like a good rhythm. You suddenly it just comes back from the day before, and you feel much better, like as you get into it and as you've warmed up. I got quite a good stride going. Unfortunately, probably about 10k into that stage, I felt quite big pain in my IT band. I'd done something to it. I don't know if it came from the day before with the big descents, or if it had come from early on in that stage, but I felt a really big pain. I definitely done something to it, unfortunately, so that was quite a struggle. So my performance wasn't as good from that point onwards, but it didn't change the fact that it was still a big mental battle. That it's just about getting across the finish line of each stage. It's a kilometre at a time, just knocking the kilometres off each time. But your body just learns to put up with it in the end. As long as you can keep your mind positive, it learns that it's going to do this one way or another. I'm not going to DNF unless I'm in like a really bad way. So yeah, it just does it somehow. It's amazing to me, but it somehow manages to recover and get you back to where you were. Yeah.
Yeah, you're learning a lot about your body, about your mind.
Yeah.
It's like that's a journey in itself, isn't it? Which is amazing.
Yeah, for sure. I never thought it would have enough steam in my legs to keep going over that distance. I was like worried when I was hobbling to the start line, especially when my IT band flared up. I had a couple kilometres where I thought, God, I can barely run on this. Even when it's cool temperatures, I was really struggling to run on it. But as time went on, I kind of learned, to kind of put up with it a little bit. I knew I wasn't as fast as I was in the 3 stages before, but I knew I could do a good enough performance to kind of keep my position where it was and not let it slip too much. And yeah, I just focused again on running on the hard surfaces and walking quickly as much as I could and taking as little rest as possible at the checkpoints. So yeah, but that was definitely what was most amazing to me. My body just putting up with it, especially my feet. They were in a nasty way, and you kind of just go numb in them, and like the blisters kind of just quieten down all of a sudden, and you kind of forget they're there until the finish line, and you take your socks off, and then suddenly the pain all comes back again. But yeah, no, I was very impressed with how my legs managed to hold up even with the IT band problem. But yeah, you put up with it one way or another. Yeah.
So going into penultimate day, how's it feeling now? I mean, I think you stressed earlier about how important it's like sort of like maintenance of everything, the blisters, the body and everything. Like this at this point must be so crucial. Like. Yeah.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. But at this point, you're absolutely filthy as well. Everyone stinks. there's no washing that can be done in the desert, and your backpack's a mess. Unfortunately, my backpack, I had quite a lot of failures with it. The front pocket zip broke 5 minutes before the start on the first stage, and then so this day, stage 5, the 30 kilometers, the actual main zip of my bag burst and fell off the rails, and so 5 minutes before the start line again, and I really had a sense of humour failure that morning, and I was on a short fuse, and I was in a really bad way. I was like, oh God, I'm not going to do this. This bloody bag. But luckily, my teammates were there to pick me up, and they, we got it sorted in the end with some safety pins, basically. So my bag was held together with a couple of pieces of string and about 5 safety pins, and I had the sleeping bag kind of molded all the way around the bag to kind of keep everything inside it. That was the best way I could do it, but it worked. But yeah, it was very annoying. So I think after doing stage 4, the marathon day, and knowing I'd still managed to cross the finish line despite the IT band issue and the blisters issue, I think I had a sudden wave of confidence. It's like, it's only 30k. That's in my head. That's like a long training run for me. I know I can do that. And after that it's just 20k as well for the finish line. So I felt pretty good on that starting line after the bag was fixed, and
Yeah.
I got my sense of humour came back to me. So I felt really good during that day. I did have problems with my IT band, and it was really tough at some points, especially at the elevation. I could really feel it in my left side, and I did have a couple like really, bad points. Well, I wasn't in a good way, but I kind of got it back and reined it back in, and run where I could do. I'd kind of keep an eye on certain people, and I'd be like, right, I can't let this person go too far in front of me. I want to keep them in sight, and I knew if I could keep these people in sight, I knew that my position wasn't falling too much behind in the field. And I'd kind of, if someone overtook me that I knew shouldn't be overtaking me, and I would like kind of make it my target to get them back and make sure I was keeping my position in the field, and that definitely helped a lot, massively mentally. I had someone that I definitely knew was a lot further behind me, overtook me, and I just clicked. I was like, right, I'm not having that. And then I found myself, I was, doing pretty decent, like 5:30, 5:45 splits, even with like my IT band issue along this like leg bed, and I made some positions up and then settled back into like a really fast kind of march to try and keep the pace up. So yeah, my body definitely held itself together in the end. I had to mentally accept that I couldn't challenge for like top 150, but I knew I could keep it within the top 25% if I really tried. So that was the end goal, and I think having that goal really helped to kind of keep me going.
With that IT band issue as well, I mean, you're getting to the back end of the race.
Yeah.
God, that must be so frustrating. Thinking like, actually, this could do for me.
Yeah.
I've done all this work, and
it was extremely frustrating. More so because I was very happy with the position I had gained after the long stage, and I knew that I was definitely seen amongst like the stronger runners, like the actual people who are running it. Top 20%. Is taken quite seriously in the MDS. So I was over the moon with that. And as soon as I felt it on the fourth stage, I was like, oh God, here we go. This is it. This is, reality check moment. This is my body telling me, you shouldn't have done this MDS race. You're not ready for this. But yeah, it was massively frustrating, but I knew that it's the MDS, you're going to get injured. Something's going to come up. It's all part of the race, dealing with injuries, and if you're not going to get the place that you wanted to get, tough luck. It's like the main goal is finishing it and becoming an MDS finisher. And so that's kind of, I just told myself, tough luck, deal with it. Other people are dealing with much worse for sure. There were people with much worse injuries. My tent mate had a really bad injury to his pelvis, and he was really struggling. He's a really strong runner, but by the end of it, he was just limping like the whole way. So there were people in much worse states than me. So that's kind of how I kept it going. Not feeling too sorry for myself, and just accepting the lower ranking, and kind of focusing on just do your best, and that's what you're here to do, is like to know that you gave it your all, and do as much as you can. So yeah, I was really upset for quite a few points during that as the more I felt it, but yeah, you learn to kind of readjust your goals and know that it's not really your fault. It's as long as you do the best and work on what is in your control, then you can't ask for any more than that. So
was that last stage as well? Is it as much as a celebration as you were expecting?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, everyone's in really good spirits on the last stage, because it's kind of like you've done the marathon stage after the long stage and then the 30k, and everyone's like, this is very possible for everyone. So I don't think there were any DNFs on that day. Everyone got through it somehow. And it was a very quick course as well, actually. It was, very hard underfoot. There were a couple dunes, but it was only about 150 meters of elevation over the 21k, which is very low. And I think they wanted it to be a fast stage because you start at the bivouac, but you end at this village where the coaches pick you up. So more for like a logistical reason, they kind of want to get you on the coaches as quick as possible, and then back to Warrazat, where the hotel base is. So yeah, it was a very quick stage. I started off really well, but unfortunately had some stomach problems that came in at about 5k. I think that was just my body saying no to the food and the carbohydrate drinks. It was just like, I've had enough of this. So I did it as best as I could, but I got through it in the end. And yeah, like just coming towards the finish line was just such a weird feeling. I crossed the line with another Brit that I knew, and we were just talking about it. And we were like, this is like such an amazing experience, but we can't wait just to get back to civilization, just to eat, normal food, have a normal toilet, a normal bed, a shower as well. We had like layers of sand over us, and our clothes my shorts could stand up by themselves at the end of the week. They just had so much sand and salt in them. So we were just speaking to each other like, this is such an amazing experience, but we know as soon as we get back to civilization next week, we're going to be like, we miss this so much, and we miss our tent mates, and we miss the camaraderie, and the competition, and just like the feeling of pushing ourselves as well. So yeah, it was definitely mixed emotions crossing the finish line, but we did just want to get back to the hotel and go back and wash and eat proper food and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, thinking about it now, I'd love to transport back to the finish line and do it again for sure. It's such an amazing feeling, especially with like the IT band issue I had, and knowing I'd really pushed it and given it my all after that. That was always like my goal, was to know that I'd because I knew I wouldn't want to go back. So I wanted to, like, if this is my one time doing it, I want to know I've left everything there and I've done as much as I can, and like I've pushed myself as much as possible. And yeah, I believed I did that, so I was very happy. Yeah.
And the hotel afterwards, like, so it must be an incredible feeling.
Yeah. So we, as a tent, so you get coaches back to the hotel is standard practice, but as a tent, we hired taxis, and we organised that we'd stop off at like a cafe or grocery shop somewhere. So about half an hour into the drive, we're all just so happy when we're so excited, and we're all just talking about food and stuff, and talking about the week. And one of the taxi driver gave us access to the music system in the car, and we had Creedence Clearwater Revival Fortunate Son playing as we were leaving the finish line, and it was like, this is like end credits of a film, and we were all just like singing along, and it was just that's like a memory I'll keep for sure. That was like a hilarious moment. But about half an hour into the drive, we stopped off at a cafe, and I can just remember us all like hobbling out, and then we had to get people to help us up the steps into the cafe, and then we just walked in, and it's a very basic cafe, but what we saw was just like a cupboard full, and we saw like Pringles, like Milka biscuits, ice creams, and we were all just like silent, and we were just having like an emotional moment, just like seeing all this food. I had, had a whole tube of Pringles, an ice cream, a Sprite, a Coke, a Toblerone. We were all just like silent eating on the tables. It was fantastic. But we were just after that just reminiscing about all the funny moments we had in the tent and stuff. But yeah, that was great. And then it was probably about a 2-hour drive after that back to the hotel, the Berber Palace, which is where all the British people stay in Warazat, which is just an amazing hotel. We walk in, and there's like an indoor fountain in the reception area, and we were all just like looking at each other like, what is this? Like air conditioning. We go back to the room and like working hot shower and a bed, even a chair. We were just like, we didn't have chairs in the bivouac, and we were just thinking, no, this is amazing. No. And then we had our suitcases to pick up as well, so then we could change into normal clothes. And so that night we had a big buffet, and I got showered and then got dressed into normal clothes, and we went straight back to the pool, to the bar, and had our first beers. And we were standing in the sun, and we were silent for about like 30 seconds after all of us had the first sip of a beer, and we were just like, this is just crazy, because a lot of us like hadn't been drinking for a little while before the race, obviously. That was definitely another highlight. Just like drinking beer together, because we had kind of, that was the moment we were fixated on during the desert. We were thinking like, right, come on guys, we can get this done. In 2 days we're going to be in the Berber Palace, and we're going to be drinking beers, and eating pizza with each other, and we'll all be laughing. So that was the moment we were focusing on throughout the whole week. And then when we finally got there, we were like, this is everything we thought it would be. This is amazing. That was a great moment. Yeah.
Any thoughts of the next challenge, or is it way too early for that?
That's what we were saying. Like once you finish the ultra, you have that kind of bug of like, what's next. Now, I'm definitely not going to do the MDS again, but I'm definitely not stopping ultra running. So, I have a place in the Lakeland 50 in July, so hopefully I'll be doing that, which is a great race. My big target for this year is, hopefully, I'm not sure if it's going ahead yet, but if Distance GG do the donkey dropout race, I'm obsessed with that format of race, and I know I can do 24 hours of running. So this year I really want to go for it and kind of compete for like a top place. So that is like my big focus for this year. But at the moment, definitely have a rest for sure. I won't be running for a couple of weeks. Hopefully that local race in July, August time. But I don't know. I won't say I haven't got any big plans, but the way it works is I see something and then I sign up for it, and the extra incentive of raising money for Guernsey Mind is always like back up to my decision to say yes to anything. So we'll see what comes next.
And I guess it's important to mention at this point that people can still donate as well to Guernsey Mind as part of this thing.
Yeah, 100%. So of course the main driver behind me doing this is fundraising for Guernsey Mind and awareness as well. A lot of what I wanted this kind of fundraising journey to be is to kind of show people what's possible in like a little amount of time, how you can kind of change your situation really quickly. So I only started running, like training properly in November 22, December 2022. And then, so I'd, done the MDS after just a year and a bit of proper running. So I kind of want that to be the kind of driver behind this, to show people, what's possible, like especially like mentally as well, overcoming mental challenges and stuff like that. So that's definitely the big reason why Guernsey Mind, is important to this. And So yeah, and they are just a fantastic charity. Like the work they do is like brilliant, and I'm sure everyone's connected, whether they know it or not, to someone who's used it. And I went there after doing the 24-hour run in December last year, and they showed me some of the things that they're doing this year, and it's brilliant. Some of the corporate kind of sessions they're doing, the non-corporate stuff, kind of they're doing a lot of work about kind of nipping these problems in the bud before they're actually there. So raising awareness of what to look out for, kind of how to work on yourself if you think you're coming up with issues and stuff like that. And I know like that will just do so much for people. So the money is really important for them to carry on doing that. And then as much as that's important, the awareness is equally important. So if you can't donate, then go onto their website and look at the work they do, and kind of try and make it kind of like a regular part of your day to kind of think about other people and what they might be going through, and kind of look at the signs and try and just make other people feel comfortable that they can come to you with problems if needed and stuff. But Guernsey Mind are always there for everyone, so they're a fantastic charity. So that is constant motivation behind all of this to carry on and keep doing it. So the Just Giving page is on my bio. It's in all the articles and stuff like that. So so they're a fantastic charity. So
it's a brilliant message to conclude things on. So thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Cool. Thank you.
That was the cool down. Thanks again for listening. Please like and subscribe for more. You can find all our sports news on gsy.bailiwickexpress.com and on all our social channels. Sign up to our daily email to keep up to date on all the work the Express team does.